Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. In today's episode, we'll be analyzing a clip here from CNN where we have Jonah Goldberg and Anna Navarro completely butting heads on mass shootings and gun control. Now, I also think this clip does a fantastic job of just summarizing where we're at as a society in terms of the right and the left trying to have conversations around important topics. With that being said, as always, if you want to join us here on the Bald Brad Show or heck support a conservative, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share this link with your friends and family all over social media. And folks, let me know in the comments down below. Are you for gun reform? Are you for gun control? Or you just want to leave things as is after all these mass shootings have taken place? Let me know down below. And folks, with that being said, let's jump into it.
I think I agree with everything that he said. And I share the moral outrage entirely. And I share the moral outrage with everybody on this panel about how horrific and just morally repugnant these slaughters are. But when I listen to you guys talking about how you're scared for your own kids, and I have a daughter, I get being scared. If we're going to start telling people that they should be scared about this is going to happen to them, we should at least put some of this in perspective. There are about 54 million kids in Americans who go to K through 12 in America. In the last 29 years, 170 kids have been killed in school shootings.
But how does that compare to, like, if my kid goes to school in Great Britain or Canada? I mean, you see some parents are like, should we leave?
One school shooting, look,
it's too many.
For me, my approach is the exact same way it was about terrorism. The number of people killed on 9/11 was not, you could say, well, more people die in car accidents every year. I don't care. It's unacceptable. The moral outrage is entirely valid and justified. But if we're going to be telling people you can't switch lanes, you're absolutely right to be outraged about the crime. But if we're going to tell people they should be terrified about their kids being dropped off at school, we should remind them that their kids are more in danger on the drive to school, statistically, than they are at the school.
Jonah, we can't do this. No, but we can't. But listen, a child's life cannot be a statistic, right? You can't tell the parents of Joaquin Oliver of Parkland. You can't tell Fred Gutenberg.
Yeah, but that's
you
moral
can't
bullying.
tell my cousins.
I'm making a basic point to say that you shouldn't tell people that they should be terrified.
If it were your child, it would not be a statistic. It would be a tragedy that you would never, ever
That's moral
recover
bullying.
from.
As a statistics teacher, I hate to say it, but people's lives or whatever you're studying is in fact a statistic within itself. So she could say all she wants that a child's life is not just another statistic or just another number, but in terms of studies and data, it is just another number and just a statistic. And you're going to see this. He goes consistently about moral bullying because the left loves to talk about empathy and morality and deal with emotions rather than actually dealing with statistics and numbers. And Jonah Goldberg here is doing a fantastic job of correlating the moral argument, which is outrageous, to the idea of, look, if the media and the left are going to build this idea of fear around kids going to school, the data itself just doesn't back it up. So if you're going to make this fear mongering going around of like you should be terrified of your child going to school and your child should be terrified, then why are you not taking that same idea and applying it to other bases in terms of statistics like your child going to school, because they're more likely to die in a car accident than they are in a shooting that's taking place on school grounds?
Why is it moral bullying?
You're making it sound as if I don't have compassion for these people. Of course I do.
It's a statistic and probabilities that we should.
I'm saying you shouldn't tell you shouldn't tell the audience that this is the thing that they should.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but she talks about that you shouldn't have your kids look at as being a statistic and a probability. Again, in terms of stats, we literally live our entire lives around probability. And I actually use this example in my classroom, and I'll keep it very basic. We all use probability in our conscious without even actually realizing it. For example, if you're sitting down in a chair right now, okay, there is a probability that that chair could fail and not support your weight, regardless of how much you weigh. But you've sat in that chair so many times, you've sat in chairs, just random chairs so many times, that the likelihood of a chair failing is extremely small. So because you ran that study yourself, you ran that experiment yourself so many times, is that you know the probability of that chair supporting your weight is extremely high to almost certainty. So this whole idea of like you can't look at a child's life as a probability or we don't live our lives or this or that is completely false. We all deal with probabilities on a day-to-day basis, 100%. There's actuaries, there's people, insurance companies that utilize these probabilities and statistics to deal with insurance, to deal with how much certain premiums should be, all those things. So this whole idea that Anna Navarro is going with is completely false. Jonah Goldberg is making a great point here. And again, I will talk a little bit later about this butting of heads that we're having as a society between the right and the left.
Be so terrified, paralyzed with fear about their own kids when their kids are more likely to die from a lot of other things.
Hold on, Jonah, of going to school. And you know what happened because of that? What happened because of that is that we have car seat laws that passed, that we have seatbelt laws, that we have speed laws.
Okay.
And so it used to be that more people died of car accidents. More kids died of car accidents. More kids died of pool accidents. We have fences around pools because we passed regulation in this is one of the only places where not doing anything has become status quo and something as a country we accept. And shame on us for accepting that. And I'm not morally bullying you. I've got children I care about, and you do too.
Yeah, I do. But when you're making it sound as if you point out that the risks to your kids are that there are greater things. If you want to protect your kids, there are other things that you have more control and agency over than random madmen shooting up schools.
So we shouldn't do anything about it?
No, I don't know why you keep wanting to go to that. This is
because you're making this into a statistics conversation.
No, I am trying
instead of about the fact that there's children being buried in coffins adorned with Superman.
So back to the moral argument, and we're going to watch more of this, but this is the point I want to make, is that when the left talks about politics, they talk about gun control, abortion, whatever it may be, they always go with the moral argument, but they also come with a lot of emotion. And usually attached with that emotion and that moral argument is the lack of statistics, the lack of use of it. Where when the right is talking like Jonah Goldberg here, when conservatives and Republicans are talking about things, that emotion, that morality is already built into the cake. And Jonah Goldberg's here saying, look, I already agree with you on that whole component, but I'm also correlating it to something else. And this is the main problem that I see, and I have seen, is the lack of being able to attach and connect statistics, probability, and data with morality, with empathy, and actually make meaning from that and to have an actual conversation, which is what we're not allowed to have here or unable to have because of what exactly you are seeing here. 100% agree that this is one of the main issues in conversations, debate all across the United States, and we're seeing it displayed here on CNN.
And I said I am morally outraged by that. And I think it's grotesque, and one shot child is too many as far as I'm concerned. But if you're going to take that moral outrage and then tell people they should be paralyzed with fear that this is going to happen to them and their kids, you're doing them a disservice.
I am not telling them they should be paralyzed with fear.
But no one
I am
is
telling them
saying
they should pick up the phone and call their senators and
fine.
telling them that it's been 10 years in Sandy Hook and that we haven't done anything is a national shame. So paralyzed with fear and paralyzed with acceptance and resignation is what we've been for the last 10 years. And it's enough of that.
Casey?
No more paralysis. Get your ass.
So we're going from her saying, oh, well, we're not basically subjecting them to fear to saying, well, for the last 10 years, we've been in fear paralysis, basically had been subjecting them to fear. So completely contradicts herself in the same exact paragraph that she's utilizing to try to disprove what Jonah Goldberg said. Unbelievable hypocrisy in the statement.
In gear and call your senators.
That's fine. I'm doing analysis. I am not doing activism. Look, and if you want to tell everyone to call their senators, that's fine. That's not my job.
The point got killed.
That's moral bullying.
Wait a second.
There you go again. I've had a cousin that's, it's like, he's like, I'm not here for activism. I'm here to analyze what's going on. I'm here to utilize studies and data and make meaning from that to have a conversation. But what she will continually wants to go to, and again, I know I'm repeating myself, we see this from the left all the time, which is why you need to try and think about who you actually want to have a conversation with, because your conversation with somebody could end up like this and you're just wasting your own time. You're wasting your life trying to have a conversation with somebody that can't actually make and connect that understanding, which you see a lot in teaching, to whatever is being discussed in that specific topic.
Excuse me, I want to hear from both of you and I want to hear from Casey, but I also want to clarify this point. Moral bullying, the idea of you want to provide perspective. You want people to know that there are other ways that children die. Got it. Yeah. But both can be true. You can also be fearful of gun violence and also talk to your kids about other aspects of it. Casey, I mean, you have the same moral outrage, but you also have the idea of the objectivity and the approach to it. What can be done?
Right. Well, so I just want to say to your point, Jonah, that I was not saying people should be afraid of this. That was not what the point I was trying to make earlier. I was trying to say people are, because they see what has happened. They are afraid. And your point is well taken, that there are a million different ways that your kid can be harmed. But the reality is, as Anna was saying, there are regulations and rules that we all agree on. It is much, much harder to get a driver's license and buy a car than it is to buy and use an AR-15.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Time out. Because I want to revert back here a few seconds. I'm sure you saw my reaction to something that she said, which completely goes with what Jonah Goldberg's saying, but contradicts Anna Navarro. Let's just go back a few seconds here. I want to see if you guys caught this.
What can be done?
Right.
And I'll pause it.
I just want to say to your point, Jonah, that I was not saying people should be afraid of this. That was not what the point I was trying to make earlier. I was trying to say people are, because they see what has happened.
There you go. Because they see what has happened. But the whole aspect of what Jonah Goldberg was saying was that you have the media, you have certain institutions that are pushing this fear out there based on a statistic that they shouldn't be fearful of. It's a complete outlier. And when the media is pushing these types of things, but they're not pushing the idea that you're more likely to die in a car accident and other nature, and that type of fear should be embedded within that if you want to have linear logic, this whole idea goes against what exactly Anna Navarro just said about, oh, well, they're not fear mongering. Then she contradicted herself saying, oh, well, for the last 10 years, we've been fear paralyzed. And now you have this lady saying, oh, well, they are scared, Jonah. They are scared. Again, you're putting kind of that idea and that probability of fear into something that is extremely, extremely unlikely to happen. As somebody, I know it's anecdotal, as somebody that literally works in a classroom every single day as a teacher, I am not fearful of a mass shooting taking place. I know the statistics on it. It's funny enough that I literally teach a statistics class. That's not the point. But the idea of something like that happening is mind-blowing. And they did this same thing with COVID, this fear-mongering. You have Charlie Chester of CNN. Oddly enough, we're watching something from CNN here. But he was a technical director that was ousted and exposed by Project Veritas that talked about them pushing fear out there to the American public in terms of COVID-19. Now, if you knew the stats on COVID-19, depending on your certain individual health that was going on, you were extremely unlikely to die from it. Extremely unlikely. 99.9% you are going to survive this thing, at least roughly in that realm, which is what we call almost certainty. To be certain in statistics, it has to be 100%. But this idea of statistics and connecting it to certain ideas, the left is incapable of doing most of the time. And so we have conversations like this.
Are afraid. And your point is well taken that there are a million different ways that your kid can be harmed. But the reality is, as Anna was saying, there are regulations and rules that we all agree on. It is much, much harder to get a driver's license and buy a car than it is to buy and use an AR-15,
That's silly. And you see this from the left all the time, that it's easier to do this. It's easier to buy a house. It's easier to get a box of cereal than it is to get an AR-15, which makes me wonder if these people have ever bought a firearm. Okay. I'm not saying it's hard to get a firearm, but I also don't think it's hard to go buy a vehicle. If you have the money, you just go buy it cash, right? I understand a lot of people don't utilize that method of saving up and buying a car with cash, which is what you should do. You shouldn't really finance things. And I know there's debates on that. That's not the purpose of the conversation here. But for her to say, oh, well, it's a lot harder to buy a car. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into buying a car that maybe make it hard. Maybe you need to do research on the vehicle. Maybe there's a certain model that you like versus another model. When you get there and you're trying to figure out which type of model you want. I mean, you can make the same argument for an AR-15 of, yeah, you're getting the base model, but maybe there's a lot of attachments you want to go through. Which attachments are better? Which grip is better? Which sight is better? Do you want to switch out the trigger for something that's either less or more appropriate to your liking? So, I mean, this whole idea that they go with, they just shout a bunch of shit. And then when you try to talk to them about that, then they go with the moral argument that's being discussed here of like, you don't care about the children, you know, there aren't just another statistic and all this other crap. And you can't, at the end of the day, have an actual conversation on reform and what should be done. It's just a bunch of, well, things need to be done. Call your senator. Cool. So you call your senator. Hey, something needs to be done, man. Good. What? And you list out nothing. Absolutely nothing. Oh, well, what do you mean? This is your job. This is why you're elected. You're supposed to figure it out. Well, you're fucking calling me, man. Well, you're supposed to figure it out. I elected you, all this stuff. I don't mean to cuss, but it's so aggravating that these leftists, these progressive leftists, just go out in the streets and it's completely accepted by their own people just to shout a bunch of crap, right? And the crap that they do shout, if it is for gun reform or gun control, it's just removing the AR-15 off the market. But we need to do something. We just need to do anything. Absolutely anything. Let's remove it off the market. But then when you actually, from the right, you talk about doing something like, hey, maybe we could actually utilize more red flag laws. Or maybe we should talk about mental instability and all these. Oh, no. We can't talk. We need to remove it, like Whoopi Goldberg. We need to remove it. You know, or like Joy Behar, The View says, oh, well, we need to stop voting for Republicans and conservatives. Things like that. These are the conversations we want to have, which isn't substantive. There's nothing within there. There's nothing that actually solves the problem. Okay, so the same people that failed math in high school are trying to talk about policy solutions when they couldn't actually solve the problem in high school of basic mathematics. And now they're trying to solve another problem that's not actually solving the problem within itself. So there's a correlation to be made there that you can't solve a freaking simple problem, but now you're trying to solve a complicated one in which you're utilizing a strategy that doesn't actually solve the problem within itself. So that's all I'm trying to say here, folks. Thank you so much for joining us on the Bald Brad Show. I hope and I'm sure my point came across with how we are as society today, where we can't even look at statistics. We can't even agree on basic truths. As always, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Share this link with your friends and family all over social media, folks. I'm sure they're going to want to see the Bald Brad Show, and I will see you later here on the Bald Brad Show.